Call the city council meeting to order. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilperson Felder.
Here.
Whitman. Here. Echoangeli.
Here.
Vining.
Here.
Germaini. Here. Lamore.
Here.
Mayor Clark.
Here, I'd ask that all please rise for the invocation. Remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Guide our working together. Give us wisdom to make the right decisions, your understanding to listen to each other, and your compassion to promote the welfare of the residents of our community.
I pledge allegiance to the flag
Of the United States of America
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
First item, please.
The next item on the agenda would be any amendments to the agenda.
Have any amendments? Looking at the city manager, city attorney, and council.
Can council add anything to the agenda?
Amend it.
I'd like to add the Arthur Leslau Community Center to the agenda.
I'm looking to Mr. Buds, find out where that would be. Is it a, I'm trying to figure where to put this at.
Your Honor, my recommendation would be that it be the last item prior to the consent agenda.
Under council action, or
I guess I would look to the councilman to see if he wants to have
Yes, I guess-
discussion or if there's an action he's
an
going to
action item.
propose.
under council action, insert discussion ALCC, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Other items, Clerk Treasurer?
Have to do anything with the presentation?
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. There was a presentation on the agenda. I thought I'd just leave it there so I could make some brief comments and alert those that may have not been present or not watching during the work session, kind of where they can find that presentation by the Student Advisory Council. So I'll make comment. Thank you, though. Other, Attorney Buds?
Your Honor, my only suggestion would be that if Councilman Echoangeli would make that in the form of a motion to amend the agenda, that then just be action be taken on that as a motion.
That first before we move
Your
on.
Honor, I'll make a motion to amend the agenda to include ALCC. And do you have an item number, Michelle?
It will be assigned, so
Okay.
it's all right. Support.
There's a motion by Councilman Echoangeli, supported by Councilwoman Whitman, to amend the agenda and under the council action include discussion regarding the Arthur Leslie Community Center. Other comments? So we need to take that vote first. I'm looking at Mr. Buds. I believe that's it. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilperson Felder.
Yes.
Whitman.
Yes.
Echoangeli.
Yes.
Vining.
Yes.
Germaini.
Yes.
Lamore.
Yes.
Mayor Clark.
Yes. Thank you. Next item, please.
The next item would be citizen comments not related to an agenda item.
Thank you. Are there any those present here this evening that wish to make a citizen's comment not related to an agenda item? Any comments from those present here this evening to start? Seeing none. Clerk, next item, please.
The next item is a presentation.
Thank you. So, well, I'll make comments to this. So there was a presentation regarding from the Student Advisory Council. So that was, while scheduled here within the council meeting, due to some time items and the students' schedules, that was presented during the council work session at 6 p.m. Of course, that is also can be viewed on Impact or live stream, or from YouTube, I'm sorry, to watch later for those that are here that may not have been present or those that are watching. It was a very informative presentation by the students and their actions and activities that culminated here at the end of the school year. And I hope that if you weren't present or didn't view, that you take the opportunity to do so and go back and see it. So that's the presentation for now. Clerk, next item, please.
The next item is under communication, item 2452, LOCC salary for local elected officials.
Thank you. Mr. Pastu, I know that you championed that through the city.
In accordance with Section 2213 of the City Code, the Local Officers Compensation Commission met on May 7th. The commission only meets in odd years before the candidate filing for the local elections. The commission determines the salaries of all elected officials unless council, by resolution adopted by 2/3 of its members, rejects them. The commission's determination of salary shall be effective 30 days after such determination with the clerk treasurer, unless again rejected by the council. At May 7th meeting, Human Resources Director Peggy Howard and myself presented information regarding salaries and from comparable communities, of which is attached as part of this correspondence. The commission decided to recommend no change for the salary for mayor and council. They did recommend 5% increase on January 1, 2020 for the clerk treasurer, and another 5% on January 1, 2021. The rationale was based on the external and internal comparables for the position itself.
That's communication to council. Any questions from council for the city manager? I'll just make a brief comment of recognition for the Local Officers Compensation Commission. While they only have to meet every 2 years, it's an important topic and an important role within our boards and commissions. I appreciate their deliberation, taking all the information that was provided by the city manager, but more so from our Human Resources Director, Peggy Howard, in compiling that information and those comparables. And also the internal study that Mr. Pastu kind of mentioned about internal. We have a compensation document that looks at all employees and their where they fall in the duties and responsibilities. The recommendation is, as it said, and of course, we have a clerk treasurer position, elected clerk treasurer position, that while unique, there's able to make those kind of determinations and study, and I appreciate their work and the recommendations. The only question I had on the recommendation, Mr. Pastu, I know in charter it says the 30 days takes action, but they were specific in their dates and time of when they're to take effect.
Correct.
And looking at Mr. Buds as well, so that's fine in which it's stated, correct?
I believe that's fine, Your Honor, and I would also say I think the 30 days is the timing for council to take action if it wanted to reject those determinations.
Excellent. Other comments from council or any questions?
No.
And it is on the item as a communication, and if there's no comments, it moves forward. And there's no action or votes unless it was rejected, and I see none that are doing that motion. So thank you, Mr. Pastu, and thanks to the LOCC for their diligence there. Clerk, next item, please.
The next item is under public hearing, item 2446, CDBG Annual Action Plan 2019-20 Public Hearing. Public hearing to receive and review comments on the proposed Community Development Block Grant CDBG budget for 2019-20. There are no comments on file in the clerk's office.
Thank you. At this time, I'm going to open the public hearing regarding the Community Development Block Grant Annual Action Plan for 2019-2020 in the public hearing. Any comments from those present here this evening regarding this item number 2446, the CDBG, Community Development Block Grant Funds on the budget? Any questions or comments? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. Clerk, next item, please.
The next item is under council action, item 2450, resolution supporting local cable franchising authority.
Thank you. Mr. Pastu, some introductory comments?
Yes. Your Honor, we have a resolution requesting City Council support for local franchising, including non-monetary obligations. I will say in the preamble, I misspelled monetary, so we'll make that correction. But the essence of it is there's a couple of proposals that are working their way through the Federal Communications Commission, of which would have significant impact in the city, in particular for cable companies, in essence, not necessarily required to provide or follow the requirements that pertain to any operation in the public right-of-ways. And so when you think about the difficulty, particularly with our city engineer and his staff, trying to manage the right-of-way as it pertains to electric utilities, natural gas, water, sewer, telephone, cable television itself, stormwater that we talked about earlier, all, some of it underground, some at the surface level, some at above ground, and to give one industry a carte blanche to do what they have without any kind of local review, we think is really inappropriate and potentially creating a problem. The other aspect of it is there is some consideration of reducing, if not eliminating, some of the franchise fees or PEG fees associated with our cable franchises. The significance of it is that we put a good chunk of our $320,000 that we received from the franchise toward Impact, which televises live our council meetings as well as rebroadcasting and providing a number of other programming and emergency alerts and notices to our community. We think it's just bad policy and, again, another infringement on local control. So we would ask council to consider adopting this resolution supporting our local cable franchising authority that we've had.
Any questions for city manager? This came to, at this time through Impact and Millwood Boudry recognizing, forwarding an email to the city regarding correspondence from the U.S. Conference of Mayors, who nationally are putting together a coalition and information onto Washington, D.C., because the FCC is weighing in on this and having some leverage of what may occur. So as discussing this with Mr. Pastou, while you could sign on as the mayor to this association, and we've chatted about that, we thought this is more important because we have had experience here in the city of negotiating and having a positive resolution between the right-of-ways with the city and I'll just say a vendor that was wanting to put small cell towers in. And because we had the opportunity to have the dialogue, we came up with a win-win solution that met their needs and even more so than what they initially thought they'd have as reception. And also, we retained the ability to make those local decisions. So, Mr. Pastou thought best that we put this as a resolution for all council, and I appreciate the support that the council's had in the past, and we will forward this if passed. Other questions from council members? If not, a motion would be in order.
Your Honor,
More?
regarding item number 2450, I recommend that we adopt it regarding the local cable franchising authority, supporting local cable franchising, including non-monetary obligations.
Point of inquiry, Your Honor?
Yes.
Is it necessary to amend the item as proposed in the agenda to correct for the spelling in the preambulatory clause?
Looking at the city attorney, no, I think it's a clerical item that can be corrected, but I appreciate the interest. So there is a motion, we need a second.
Second.
There's a motion by Councilman Moore, supported by Councilman Nicolangeli, to, on item 2450, the resolution supporting the local cable franchising authority as the resolution is presented. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilperson Felder?
Yes.
Whitman? Yes. Michaelangeli? Yes. Vining? Yes. Jermaine? Yes. Lamore?
Yes.
Mayor Clark?
Yes. Clerk, next item, please.
The next item on the agenda is item 2434, Water Department Inventory and Year 1 Meter Replacement Conversion Program.
Thank you. Mr. Pastou.
Our city administration is recommending a purchase order approval related to the water department's purchase for fiscal year 1920 with the meter inventory and field services for the first year replacement conversion program that would be with Badger Beacon Advanced Metering Analytics based on a cellular-based system. The significance of it is it's a big-ticket item. It's a little over $650,000. But also, it's an important one because this is the start of a multi-year implementation with this metering program based on what Mr. Leroy has and his staff have programmed. This first year will cover better than half of our customers, the large industrial, commercial customers, as well as our other local government providers. But it'll provide a much better and timely and metering with our system and provide the information that they need to better manage the system. And given the dollar amount and the significant direction it's going, I asked council to consider this under council action tonight.
Any questions for Mr. Pastou for this item? Seeing none. Motion or action is in order. And Councilman Lamore.
Regarding item number 2434, I recommend that we approve the purchase and field services from SLC Meter LLC for fiscal year 2019-20 meter inventory and for year 1 meter replacement conversion program to Badger Beacon AMA cellular-based system, and then a purchase order in the amount of $654,306.41, and a total amount of $687,000 be encumbered to include a 5% contingency, be awarded, and further recommending the city manager or his designee be authorized to sign all necessary documents on behalf of the city of Monroe, if needed.
I'll second.
There's a motion by Councilman Lamore, supported by Councilwoman Germania on item 2434, the Water Department Inventory Meter Replacement Conversion Program. See no further questions. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilperson Felder?
Yes.
Whitman?
Yes.
Michaelangeli? Yes. Vining? Germaini?
Yes.
Lamore?
Yes.
Mayor Clark?
Yes. Clerk, next item, please.
The next item on the agenda was the added item discussion regarding ALCC, and a number will be added in the clerk's office after the meeting.
Thank you. Councilman Nicolangeli.
Your Honor, the management of the ALCC, the community center, and the library have been a source of conversation with the council for about 3 years, dating back to when the council had asked to work with the ALCC board on a joint strategic plan, which was facilitated by an adjunct professor out of EMU. And then after that, the city provided consulting services with Florence Buchanan to assist the board in terms of governance and leadership. And then the third action that the city took was that Mr. Pastu, our city manager, was put on the board of directors of the ALCC nonprofit to provide additional governance and leadership and input. Based on the information that's been provided by the city manager recently, that it just appears that the nonprofit, the ALCC nonprofit that runs the Arthur Lesau Community Center, which is a city facility, is I hate to use the term, but the best description is the board is dysfunctional. And with that in mind, because of the amount of taxpayer funds that goes into that, approximately $140,000 a year, the great need that the community down there, the neighborhood needs, especially the children need for a stable facility that provides services for the area kids, and really to maximize the investment that the community has made in the building and open it up for more residents of the community to use it. I would like to make the motion that based on the lease agreement that was approved by the city, specifically Section 15 of the lease, that we provide in writing 90-day notice to cancel the lease with the board. And I'll make that as a motion, Your Honor. That we cancel the lease with the ALCC nonprofit who operates our community center. We give them the 90-day notice that's prescribed in the lease agreement that we no longer need their services to manage that facility.
Support.
Right, a couple notes here. Thank you. There's a motion by Councilman Nicolangeli, supported by Councilwoman Whitman, for the motion to send the ALCC board under the lease agreement, Section 15, which provides for a 90-day notice to terminate cancel lease. He's requesting that be sent, and there's a second by Councilman Whitman. I'll entertain any conversation from council since it was an item that's been added to the agenda. Council members. Because he's asking, it's under council action for action at this time. I may have some comments, but I'll see if there's others from council first. I'll start at the end. Councilman Felder.
I would ask the councilman if he has any proposed follow-up action on how we deal with the city-owned facility, the community center, in lieu of his proposal after the fact. And also if he would be open to having someone from the board or the executive director of the center come and propose to council sometime before taking action.
May I?
Oh, yes, please do. I'm sorry. I was checking.
I think what we've talked about this for over 3 years, and I think the what we've tried to communicate to the community is this. Everybody associates the ALCC nonprofit with the facility. And we have made the point, I think fairly clearly over and over, that the community center and the library are city-owned facilities. And the nonprofit, which is a operating nonprofit, we lease the facility to them to operate it, and they are not functioning properly, okay? What makes this even more interesting is that in addition to them operating the facility, we as the city and taxpayers give them annually $140,000 towards the operation. So it's incumbent upon them to use that money wisely, which what I'm hearing is they are not, okay? And they're not providing the service. Once we terminate the lease, which I'm hoping that we can do this evening, because it's a 90-day period, it'll give the city administration the opportunity to work with other partners in the Community Foundation, the YMCA, the United Way, MCOP, other facilities that could provide maybe some opportunity for either administration of the building, okay, partnering with the city, which isn't happening. But we need to make a change because we're going to invest about $1.5 million in a major park facility down there, not including what the city manager is talking about next year of investing another $200,000 or $300,000 in improvements to the kitchen and to the meeting facilities in order to provide food service for the community and primarily for seniors and children. So we keep making a public investment in that facility, and we're not getting, it's not being managed correctly. And these are always hard decisions. But when we're talking about taxpayers' dollars, and based on the information provided by the city manager, it's one of those tough decisions that we have to make because we've been doing this with them for 3 years, and they are not improving. So we have to take some action, in my opinion. And I don't want to make it contingent. I don't want to make it, personally, I don't want to say, let's have the board come in and let them talk to us again. We've done that. They've been here. We've helped them with strategic planning. We've done a number of things. It's time to pull the plug based on what I saw this weekend. Time to pull the plug. We have a creative administrative staff. We have a lot of good partners in the community. Trust me, we'll figure something out.
Okay, and then or Councilman?
I do, yes.
Okay, you now or?
Sure. Yeah,
Oh, Councilman Felder, and I know there's other council members that probably have something to say, and we can kind of have some dialogue.
I'm not outright opposed to the councilman's premise, only the logistics of carrying it out. And I'm looking at this 90-day timeline, this 3-month timeline of whether we're going to seek other partners and work with them to have them be the nonprofit that operates the facility, or whether it be a city-operated facility. I'm looking at 90 days, and well, if I was the operations director at one of those nonprofits, I'd be sweating bullets at a 3-month timeline to take over a major operation like that. I just don't know that that's that time frame is going to be sufficient to accomplish what you want to accomplish, and not have the center be temporarily closed while the new occupants move into the facility and get the operations undergoing. It's a logistical question.
Your Honor, if I may, it's much like the discussion that we went through on the ice arena. If we have to close the facility, close the community center for 6 months until we find an appropriate vendor or an organization to run it, so be it. But it's better than consistently losing taxpayers' money and having it dysfunctional. So if we already have budgeted money, we can mothball it for 6 months if we have to give the city manager and the administrative staff time enough to talk to other partners in the community to put together a viable program. But I think to me, it's not, you can't make it contingent on one or the other. We have a problem down there that we have to solve, and then we have an opportunity that we have to leverage. But you can't combine them together because you have to terminate the lease to give them notice. They have 90 days and they're done. And then if we're not ready in that 90-day period, then we close the facility. The library stays open. We're going to do construction on the park. Things will be happening down there, but it'll give us time to find the appropriate partner.
Councilman Lamore, and we'll move along.
Yes, sir. I'd like a little bit more, if you don't mind, a little bit more clarification as to what you mean by the dysfunction. What is it that you're claiming is the dysfunction of the ALCC? I guess is, or maybe Vince can answer that, I'm not sure.
Probably want to shift that to the city manager. Of course, we did receive our city manager update in our packets regarding one of the three items. One item was the ALCC funding, and I think there's some things in this that gives the and Mr. Pastu can enlighten us on whether he's optimistic on what can or cannot be achieved there as it currently is. Mr. Pastu.
I'm going to start that I do like all of the people on the board. And I'm not just saying that. They are good people, very concerned with the community. But there is a dysfunction, I think, between the role of the board, the executive director, of which great effort was made this last fall to try and get that flowing in the right direction. I don't think it exists at this point in time. But I also think that part of it is a frustration on some of their part as to how do we go about addressing some of these issues. We now know we have potentially a cash flow issue that's of great concern, and that probably was the point that just threw me over the edge is that recognition. But it doesn't function like you would have an expected nonprofit board and the roles and responsibility of board members, the chair and even the director. They're not working in sync. And I think all of us have a strong, and even many of the board members know that there are opportunities with community partners to expand beyond the programs and services that are currently provided. And it almost, as we started this conversation last year, necessary as our largest taxpayer, DTE Energy, somewhere down the road starts reducing the value of their plant by over the years. We want to make them sustainable. So it's not moving in the direction I would hope, but I also think that the council has done everything it can to try and get to the high ground, to try and provide the assistance that's necessary. Trust me, I've contemplated how do we go about if there is a change. I do think even at a minimum, there is no need to close it. I would look to keep the existing staff in place as we make the transition with the partners that would take place. But I would not look to close it. 90 days is actually a good target. It may be even, could that get you through the end of the summer, which is vital for that operation as well. But find us into the early fall. So, I do think that much like with what happened with the ice arena, that it's probably time to move this forward and expand, I think, some of the programs that we have. And, there'll be a lot of criticism directed probably at me. That's okay. But test it in 2 years where we're going to be at. I think everyone in the community and everyone here at the city council will be much more happy to do that. So we'll make it work. It won't have to close. We got the funding in place. The budget that was adopted, that's still in place. So we'll make it work.
Can I ask one question?
Jimmy.
So to understand, there is no financial action plan at this point for them to recover in any way?
If I may, through the mayor,
Yes, please do.
part of the challenge is I don't know the magnitude of the cash flow problem. That's the problem.
Yeah.
It's hard to say what the extent of it is and how you can recover from it if you don't know what your current cash balance is and what your ongoing monthly operating expenses. And so it's, but intuitively, I can tell you, it doesn't look right. And it doesn't look like the numbers are headed in the direction that they should. So it gets to a point where you just, okay, how much longer can we continue down this path? I had no idea that this was going to come. I was planning more on the June 17th meeting for the discussion, but now that it's on the floor,
Just have a little more
Councilman
follow-up to
Wilmore?
that. Just, my major concern is where the, 3 months, if we're forced to shut it down, like Councilman Felder said, it's just, the logistics of getting another, nonprofit in place to take care of that. And, what about the kids? That's what I worry about more than anything else. That's my major concern.
Councilwoman Whitman?
I think my main concern is the children too, but we have to have people that set a good example. And that my very first year on city council, I was down there and we did a strategic plan and we were going to be a team and we were going to do this and we were all gung ho, but we never received any of the information. My feeling is that I'm hoping that we don't close, but what we're doing isn't working. So we have to revisit this and maybe end this nonprofit and start another one. You know, there are other people that would be interested in working with those children. And I'm not saying anything bad about the people that are down there working. I know how much they care about those children and how close they are to them. But if they want to stay open, we have to take action. We've tried depending on them to be able to change, and it's just not working. Do we want to sit here and watch them fail, or do we want to intervene and try to start send it off in a new direction?
Other comments from council?
Your Honor,
John?
I think it's, to me, that this action has nothing to do with the kids, because we'll figure something out. What it has to do is the fact that we are committing $140,000 worth of taxpayers' funds to operate that facility, where the city manager tells us he has no confidence in what the cash flow issues are. Now, that is concerning. When you're talking with taxpayers' funds, that's concerning. Okay? So it's not about the kids. The kids are going to be taken care of. It's about making sure that we have another board or another entity down there that knows how to run that facility. Because I'm not going to keep extending every quarter, giving them $35,000 of taxpayer money, and then I have the city manager tell me he doesn't even know what the cash flow issues are. When I saw that in the memo this weekend, I said, that's it. I said, that's enough. Because that operation is not that big, that with all the technology out there, QuickBooks, accounting programs, just balancing the checkbook, you should know what your cash flow position is. And for our chief administrator to say he has no confidence on what the cash flow conditions are, that really is a concern to me as a city council person. So that's where it's at, Your Honor.
So the comments from council, I just have Councilman Felder, I have a couple, go ahead.
Certainly. Well, just a couple of the financial and transparency issues certainly sound egregious. If they're as bad as the city manager says they are, which I have to imagine that they are. But I also don't think that $140,000 is probably what's going to be allocated to that center in the future, regardless of who's running it. We had a big budget discussion about that item last budget cycle, and going forward sort of gave warning that, whether it's this body or another body, 140,000 probably is an unsustainable level for the city's involvement. If the United Way, which I think is the other major partner of the ALCC, the other major funder, is not similarly a funder of whatever nonprofit comes in after, that funding will not be there either. So it's not another organization coming and taking over and operating it at the same budget in revenue that they have right now. It seems to be much less than that, which would, I think, create a much more dire situation for whatever nonprofit came in to replace them. Furthermore, I guess I would ask the city manager if he thinks that any of the problems with the board could be solved if given time, or if he thinks that they are both persistent and systemic, and if they're going to change in the future.
Question. Mr. Bastu, thoughts?
It's hard to say. I mean, I've only been there, 3 meetings, but we've put a lot of time into it, and I think the cash flow issue was the one that just sent me over the top. But I also just, a part of the frustration is not, one of the things that you had as a city council in your funding agreement was to provide a 3-year forecast. And the essence of it was, okay, start looking for partners, and they've struggled with that. And I think that is probably one of the bigger challenges, because we know that there are many organizations that would be more than happy to partner and provide services, but they also have to be confident that there is the ability to provide the reporting that is critical for the sponsors of some of these other funds, that they're going to get the information that they need to provide back to their other sources of funding, whether they're local, state, or federal funding. And so that's another challenge in there, is just the organizational infrastructure is just not in some ways where it needs to be.
Your Honor,
Councilman?
Vince needs to rewind and play that over again, because I think that answers Councilman Felder's concern. When you have a nonprofit board that isn't operating effectively or efficiently, they're going to be less likely to get funds from other nonprofits, community foundations, or even philanthropy, because people are saying they don't know how to manage their resources or their money. If you get a different nonprofit or entity down there that people have confidence in, there's a greater likelihood that people will put financial resources in there to help with the sustainability. But they're not going to with this group that's in there right now running it. I have no problem with the people individually, but as a board, they're just not doing what they need to do. And that's the problem. So I think by maybe changing and getting a different entity, you may actually increase the success rate.
So I guess I'll make a follow-up comment to that, because it's one of the items on my list, and Councilman Michelangeli and Mr. Pastu said it does have an impact. And then I'll get to my other parts. But, so you talk about declining support. They did submit a grant to the county for Commission on Aging, and they were declined. And they were declined because the submission was not adequate. It didn't show the results of the work over the past year. They did appeal, which was their ability to do so, and they did refine some of the information. They were funded, but they were funded less than they were the year before. So that was that is a tangible example of what happened here recently. Another item that concerned me was there's a reason why any nonprofit, any board has bylaws. Is if you don't know what to do, you go back and look and see what you should be doing by what you said is going to be by your bylaws. And I think there's been some opportunities that just making decisions or taking people on as additional members that didn't follow the process. Those are items that are procedural that are concern me. The funding, and the cash flow, it should concern all of us, and I'm sure it concerns them as well. And I'd also like to know, and ask Mr. Pastu, is there a determination possible? And what was the last, I guess, comment and thought process, a timeline regarding that, if at the last meeting? So I think they had a special meeting that was called. Did they have a response to that?
If I may, Your Honor,
Yes.
At the meeting, we were presented with the budget to actuals for January, February, and March, which was the start of the fiscal year for the ALCC, but did not have a corresponding balance sheet, of which the most important thing is what's your cash position. It's hard for us to sit there and evaluate, and some of the members, we can figure it out if we can track, but they lost $26,000 in the first quarter of the calendar year than their fiscal year. So that's a trend that's not sustainable. Now, what caused it, if there's one-time expenditures, is one thing, but it's the level of understanding what your operating revenue is to work with, what your ongoing operating expenses are, and more importantly, what kind of cash do you have to sustain it? And so that was my alarm with part of that.
So I don't have the agreement in front of me, and I do recall, as Councilman Michael, I just said what the terms were as far as the process of canceling a lease in the 90 days. The funding that they received from the city is within our fiscal year, if I'm not mistaken, and we had a time frame going back, as I think, and council can correct, or anybody can correct me, they had an allotment that it was to occur through the end of the year, and if certain progress was made, that the council would release funds then on a quarterly basis based on what was needed. And if I'm wrong, Mr. Pastu, please correct me, so we all understand. That's what at least what we all recall. And so then it got into this year, calendar year, but we're still working on that budget year, what was passed last year, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Is there any, do we have funding that's in place that has been, I guess, agreed to? Or was a carryover? I'm trying to think in our budget
Well,
year, we would have made allocation for the ALCC to function, but I think as we're having, who we select to manage that is up to the council.
correct. Yeah, we have, through the end of this year, I think they've got their full disbursement for our fiscal year, the 140,000 plus the utilities that we took that on as well to help and assist in that regard. And then we have 140, the same thing budgeted for fiscal year starting July 1, 2019. So you got another 140,000 plus estimated utilities for that, which is I think about $17,000. So.
Okay, so my last comment then is a matter of how we proceed. And I think that, obviously, Councilman wanted to have it as an action item this evening under council action. So I'll ask if we provided the ALCC board awareness of the action item for tonight. Do we have any awareness that they're aware there'd be motions and discussion?
Our office did not provide any notice,
Okay.
no.
So that's really an item that sits for me because, I'm not saying we're going to get answers, but on the other hand, then we have to say that we weren't willing to hear them. And I know where Councilman Michael Lynch is coming from because we've been here before on a couple other items, and it took a whole restructuring. One was, I'll say, successful to the point that it continues, and the other, which we all know, was not. So I always like to, not that I want to fill the space with people that want to give us, their personal comments as much as the reality of what the decision has to be made on. And I understand all that's been said, and it does concern me that we have a board that's not moved forward like we would, as a council, would want it to, and perform the way we'd like it to be, and find those other revenues that was asked. In fact, they've lost revenue, and that's concerning. So the question comes down to, we're making, there's motion and a second, but we're not providing the opportunity to hear further from the ALCC board. Just a comment. Councilman, go ahead.
Your Honor, I guess my opinion is we've had conversations with them. They have, over the years, they were supposed to provide us regular reports, information, which they have not. And then this recent cash flow issue.
Mm-hmm.
And then at the beginning, if I'm not mistaken, in July, we typically make another $35,000 commitment. I have no interest in notifying their board that we may terminate our lease, because the lease agreement says either party can terminate it at any time with 90-day written notice. And if they want to keep their nonprofit going, they can. But we're telling them, you're not going to be managing our facility. They can manage something else, but they're not going to be managing our facility. And I don't think postponing it for 2 weeks to have them come here is actually going to change my opinion, based on what I'm seeing and what I'm hearing from the manager and what the implications on the cost are.
So I have a question for Mr. Pastu in relation to this discussion anyways. So in your meetings that were with the ALCC board and those that were there, or I'm sure there was discussion related to not just the finance, but the operations, what we all agreed that we wanted to move forward and aren't progressing in that fashion. Was there indication of the fact that if there weren't changes, that there'd be, there could be action by the council?
I did not go to that extent in talking with them, other than I think, just, some of my expressed frustration that we shouldn't be at this point with our uncertainty with finances. And again, I've only been on the board since March, but and I missed the month of April meeting, but I haven't had any kind of discussion with them regarding this possibility.
Okay. So my last question for you, Mr. Pastuch, I know you attended meetings and also the special meeting. So they have a director, which was hired by the board, and they have a board chairperson. Does either of those persons provide any, I'll just say, answer or accounting for the items that we've talked about here, whether it be cash flow or programs or funding or bylaws? I'm just wondering if they had any comments to those. If not, that's fine.
Internally, they've had, there was a discussion at a meeting a couple of weeks ago about, how to handle better communications. I mean, in some ways, there was a sense that that was the issue, and in some ways, I don't think it is. It's just a matter of accepting of roles and how things should be functioning, and in that regard. And the troubling part of it is they all care. They really do. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. But at the same time, it's just not functioning effectively as a corporation should. And that's really what they are. Is they should be functioning like a corporation where there's clear lines of authority and responsibility, and again, part of that entrepreneurial aspect that they need to take on with partnerships. And I just don't see that drive taking place, to be honest with you. Okay. And also the understanding of how do you go. If there was one meeting, is how many times, well, what do we do? And that sometimes is problematic when everyone is frustrated and yet they're not certain as to what's the next step to try and get this to where we want it to go.
A lot of frustration I've had because over the past couple of years, and of course this board, and as they've transformed, the opportunities for some programs that I've sent to them that seem to get bypassed and don't have the youth opportunities. So I did send it to them again this year. We'll wait and see if that happens or not. I'm not sure. So if there's, I know that there's since there's a motion and a second, I'll take some final comments. Councilman Vining.
As far as the question, Your Honor, that you asked Vince about, were there any warnings?
Yeah.
The council may or may not know, but I resigned some months ago from the ALCC board, and my main reason for resigning was because I wasn't aware of the financial situation. We did a great board training with Florence Buchanan's company, and actually Mr. Cochran told us of some of his past board experiences, and told us of one board, hope you don't mind me sharing, Mark, that he resigned from because he wasn't aware of the financial outlay of that board, and that was a big the main reason why I resigned, because I didn't feel comfortable, especially as being a signer on accounts and things like that, and not knowing. And personally, I've never been on a board ever where I didn't get a financial report and an agenda, and I think those are basic things. So as far as being warned, or for lack of a better word, I've been attempting to sound this alarm for at least a couple years, and being straight out with it that, hey, if we don't get this together, I don't believe the city is going to continue to fund this operation. So it's not as if it's a secret.
Right. I think the word I'm looking for is awareness, because awareness, then you should be taking action to rectify. And if you don't take action to rectify, then you shouldn't be surprised later when it's not moving forward.
Yeah, so I don't know, maybe just out of what's the word I'm looking for? To invite them again for the, I don't know how many time to say what, but these should be simple questions, answers to simple questions. Where's the financial report? What kind of cash flow are we operating with? They just don't seem to be difficult questions. You should have that at the push of a button. So I don't know, maybe having them here, I don't know what difference it would make at this point. It's very difficult for me because I'm very attached to to the community center, but I want to see, again, I've said it a million times, innovative, ongoing, consistent programming. You know, when I saw the young people lined up here today, we have a captive audience at the community center. A lot of our kids, that's their drop off, you know, after school, and there's no reason why programs like that are not going on. And so while it's very difficult, you know, I don't know if another conversation will help. It may.
And that's what I'm looking for is comments from all the council. And I know that I appreciate everybody's input. I think there's maybe some final comments, and there's a motion and a second. Don't want to delay action on a motion and a second, but Brian, I think you might, or I'm sorry, Councilman Lower may have had a final comment.
I do. Just wanted to kind of reiterate what Councilman Vining was saying regarding, she saw a lot, and I understand you being there, you saw a lot of the action going on and the problems there. And what it sounds like, there are a lot of problems. But I also feel that there's a need for response from them. Is 2 weeks going to make that much of a difference to allow them that time to respond? And sometimes it settles itself at that time and point, just by how they respond. You know, maybe they feel the same way. And that's something I'd like to hear from them, though, at least to solidify my decision, for sure.
I guess, seeing there's any other comments, I'll say if it, I'll just say if it does pass, I'm certain that we will hear from them. And there's much that can happen in 90 days as well. Councilman
The
Nicolangeli.
only thing that I want to clarify is, I'm not suggesting that we not
Correct.
fund
Correct.
the community center. I'm saying that we terminate our lease agreement with this nonprofit board, and we will continue funding with another community partner, or, as the city administrator said, possibly even internally, to make sure that the programs are delivered. That's the issue. Sorry, Millward, thank you. So, just to reiterate, I'm not suggesting that we terminate the funding, just the lease agreement with that board to operate the facility. So,
I think that's a good clarification. I know it's been said through the discussion, but it's really what the motion is about, so, and the support, as I heard. So, Councilwoman Germaini, I will get his last comments if they wish.
I don't think it's about, like Councilman Aquangeli said, there are people out there that are not getting the resources and programs that they deserve. The kids, the seniors, and we can do a lot better than we're doing with that center.
Absolutely. Very good. There's a motion and a second. I'll see if there's other comments. If not, there's need to have any repeat of the motion. I think it's understood. Looking to see if there's any questions. Councilman Felder?
I think I already know the answer, but just a question for Councilman Icoangeli, if he'd be open, in the spirit of fairness, to tabling the motion until the meeting on the 17th in order to give the ALCC board members an opportunity to come here and speak.
if this was the first incident, I would say yes, but this has been ongoing at least since I've been on council for 3 or 4 years. So it's time, I hate to say it, it's time that we pull the Band-Aid off quickly and move on.
Okay. Certainly not opposed to the discussion.
So there is a motion and a second. Seeing that the motion doesn't need to be reread and it's understood. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilperson Felder?
Yes.
Whitman?
Yes.
Eglangeli?
Yes.
Vining? Yes. Germaini?
Yes.
Lamore?
No.
Mayor Clark.
Yes. So, clerk, next item, please.
The next item is the consent agenda, and under approval of payments to vendors, the amount should read $984,668.94, 984,668.94.
Are there any items on the consent agenda that council wishes to have pulled for further discussion? Any items on the consent agenda council wishes to have pulled for further discussion? Seeing none, are there any items on the consent agenda those present here this evening wish to have pulled for further discussion? Any items from those present here this evening? Seeing none, a motion would be in order.
Your Honor,
Councilman Felder,
I motion that all items on the consent agenda be accepted, placed on file, and recommendations carried out.
Second.
motion by Councilman Felder, supported by Councilman Lamore, that all items on the consent agenda be accepted, placed on file, and recommendations carried out. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilperson Felder?
Yes.
Whitman?
Yes.
Iko Angeli?
Yes.
Vining? Jermaine?
Yes.
Lamore?
Yes.
Mayor Clark.
Yes. Next item, please.
I have no further items, Your Honor.
So it is June. Councilman Felder.
Thank you, Your Honor. Well, I certainly enjoyed the presentation by the Monroe Student Advisory Council this evening. The leadership that group displays is always impressive. I guess I should stop being surprised by it by now. But it is, of course, nice to not be the youngest person in the room for a change, so. Another announcement, my wife and I were blessed enough to enjoy the birth of our daughter last Sunday.
Congratulations.
So depending on the timing, I wasn't sure if I could be here, but I'm very happy to be here at this meeting with all of you. And then, of course, the Relay for Life. I attended that event this weekend. It is worth noting that I attended in the morning because everyone that attended in the afternoon deserves a medal for bearing through the weather there. It is probably worth noting also that several downtown businesses were sponsors of that event as well, and I know Chip Williams DJ'd the event, so that was cool to see. That's all I have, Your Honor.
Thank you. Councilwoman Whitman,
I have nothing this afternoon or this evening.
or Iko Angeli.
Your Honor, I just wanted to, again, thank all the volunteers and all the committees and commissions we had since the last council meeting. We had the appreciation dinner. It was really nice seeing all of the folks that volunteer their time to make the city great. And it was a nice gesture, and appreciated the presentation, and I thought the event went very well. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilwoman Vining.
Your Honor, on June 19th, in the city parking lot attached to the ALCC, we are going to be having Monroe County's first annual Juneteenth celebration of freedom. Many of us were here when Aaron Lavender came and gave us a little history lesson on Juneteenth, but it's affectionately known as the Black Independence Day because it began to be celebrated a few years after the Emancipation Proclamation was signed. Many of the enslaved people did not realize that the Emancipation Proclamation had been signed. So it took the Union generals a few years to get the word out. We didn't have internet or anything back then. So the enslaved people who were the last to find out in Galveston, Texas, they started the tradition, and now Juneteenth is a national holiday. It's little known about it. It's not taught in American schools, but we intend to teach the people of Monroe County about the holiday. So we're going to have a big cookout on June 19th. It's from 3 p.m. to 7 p.m. I'm going to talk to Mrs. Egan about getting it on the city's website. But quickly, the idea came about because we were talking about African Americans attending certain events, the Democratic Party meetings being one of it. I'm not trying to be partisan, but that's where the conversation came up. And what we decided to do was try to throw events different cultural events to bring people across the county together to learn about one another's cultures. And so this is the first of what will hopefully be more events showcasing all of the different cultures that make up Monroe County. So everyone's invited. We're going to have more information as the weeks roll by. There's an essay contest that the children are participating in, so I'm really excited about that. And also, the Selma Rankins Community Gardens were planted last Saturday. It's really beautiful there. So if you get a chance, ride by on the corner of East 2nd and Winchester Streets. It's looking really nice. So many people in the city were helpful with that, mainly the fire department, the Monroe Police Charities, and the City of Monroe Water Department. So I want to thank you guys again for being there from the beginning. And this is our 4th planning year, and we're still going strong. So if you guys get a chance, stop by and check it out. And also, the community college has a grant that also assists in the gardens. Thank you.
Councilwoman Germaini.
I'm thankful that it looks like we're going to have a jazz festival here in Monroe, thanks to our community and all of their donations. And I'd like to call on Patrick Lewis or Vince to give the public an update on the construction timeline that was supposed to be done last year, because I've had a lot of people asking me what's going on with last year's construction.
Some of the carryovers that are still
Yes,
pending, so.
yes.
Ms. Vince, oh, I guess Patrick's here. Okay.
Honorable Mayor and Council, Patrick Lewis, Director of Engineering and Public Services. Councilwoman Germaini actually gave us a heads up that she wanted me to elaborate on some of last year's projects that were postponed. And I think, actually, I just finished writing this month's status report, so I'll send that out to all the council and the public as I normally do. But there are 3 projects that were on last year's resurfacing program that were deferred, and that was we worked with the contractor. A lot of things were late last year because of the 3-week lockout they had in September, and that really kind of killed the back end of the season. So we worked with Al's Asphalt and told them, we don't want you to start if you can't finish. And so it looked like we were going to run into trouble finishing. So Parkwood, Scottwood, and Maple, the west section of Maple between Linwood and the north dead end. Those were all the 3 projects that were deferred from last year on our local street program. The contractor's working on Scottwood and Parkwood. They're going to do Maple last, and part of that's because they're using the north end as a staging area, so they want to pull out just when they get all their stuff out of the area there. So I don't have a definite date because they're doing the south side curb on Scottwood and Parkwood this week, probably pouring those curbs back the following week, and I think towards the back end of June we'll be starting to work on Maple with the curbs. Hopefully paving sometime in the first part of July. So that's keep our fingers crossed that we don't have much more rain, and that should be what finally close out the 2018 project sometime in the middle of the year.
Thank you for that.
You're very welcome. Thanks.
That's all.
Thank you. Councilman Moore.
Yes, Your Honor. I'd like to once again thank the volunteers, the commissions, and the boards. They do a wonderful job for the city. I really do appreciate them, and I hope that they feel that sincerely. I'd also like to thank our Community Schools Advisory Board. They're about as professional as you get. They look great. They handle themselves very well, as we saw tonight. And finally, regarding our 2 new hires for our fire department, without the assessment being complete yet, I just think it was a little bit too quick and presumptuous. Because we don't know what the assessment's going to bring yet. It certainly was within their rights to hire 2 people, but we don't know the direction that we're going with this assessment yet. And I just think it may have been an act that could have been basically delayed. And the other thing, I hope it would not influence or sway our board in any way or manner to go away from what the recommendations are on the assessment. So it's a little concerning, and I just wanted to make note of that. That's it.
Very well. I have a few comments. I'm going to start with the item that was we could not get to during the work session. You know, it was not there or something that came forward, and we heard a lot of good information tonight regarding the Telegraph Corridor and other SEMCOG grants. So There was discussion here in the last couple of weeks about a multi-community planning application being submitted, had to do with the kind of a Monroe Area Loop Trail feasibility study. It was done years ago. I know the Councilman Akalangi will have familiarity with it. It talks about from Monroe out 7th Street, there's a right-of-way that extends all the way to Raisinville over to Monroe Street, North Custer, back through Munson Park, and connects to what's existing within the city in our walkways, but also our sidewalks, and also then what's been done since that past proposal, getting out to Sterling State Park. So the county has taken the lead as far as championing and submitting a multi-community planning application, very similar to the Telegraph Corridor one that we as a city championed and partnered with Frenchtown Township and Monroe Township. So the current partners are that, of course, the County of Monroe, and they're asking the City of Monroe, Monroe Charter Township, Frenchtown Charter Township, as partners. During the discussion, I thought that the Monroe County Intermediate School District, as well as Monroe County Community College, who are both SEMCOG members, also maybe be involved as a partner, which is, I'm sure they'll provide letters of support, but also there's the financial contribution. As we know, there's a match. So I'm bringing that to council now, and it's not something obvious that's an actionable item because it wasn't there. The amount that would be part of a contribution from the city in this match is within the city manager's review. But I thought rather than just sending a letter of support from the city, I don't think it's right for the mayor just to do that because the council has been championing many trails and opportunities and expansions. So I wanted to bring this forward just to let you know, because the deadline does come up Friday. I could send the draft, the grants, the application. What they're looking for from the City of Monroe is a letter of support, but then when it comes to the funding, it's about $2,200 on $22.68. Obviously, that could be reduced if they get the other partners on there for support. So I guess I'm putting this to letting council have this for if there's discussions or questions, but also how we might respond to this. Councilman Akalangi.
Is it appropriate, would you like a motion that we support this?
I think I'm looking at Mr. Buds. I think we can. The idea is to make sure there wasn't opposition or concerns. And I know it's coming at the last minute, which we don't like to do, but I received here this week the revised draft. So in essence, it's what I said. They're looking for a letter of support, but also it comes with that is that we're willing to make that contribution with the other matches.
Your Honor, I'll make a motion that the mayor and city council support the multi-jurisdictional planning grant for the non-motorized plan.
Yeah.
Second.
Motion by Councilman Akalangi, supported by Councilman Lamore, for the motion that was made regarding the multi-community planning application that the county is going to submit, but the city provides some funding support as stated, but also would be the letter of support. I'll take any final comments because this is not something that was on the agenda. And I'm more than willing to send this if you'd like to read it further. I know it's after the action, but
That's good.
okay.
We're fine.
Seeing no other? Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilperson Felder?
Yes.
Whitman? Yes. Akalangi?
Yes.
Vining?
Yes.
Jermaine?
Yes.
Lamore?
Yes.
Mayor Clark?
Yes, and thank you for the time to, we didn't get that at the work session. So I have a couple of other announcements here, just some activities, but also I'm just going to follow up on Councilman Lamore's as well. This Friday, June 7th, as the first Friday, but it's also the Art Crawl from 6 to 9 p.m. downtown. The following day, the Downtown Monroe Business Network has the Open Air Market and Car Show, which is on Saturday, June 8th from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. So here's some activities that have been held in the past. Brings a lot of people downtown and the opportunity to participate. But also during the Open Air Market, there'll be music at Loringer Square between 11 a.m. 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. For a few hours. There's a couple dates coming up regarding the National Park Service and the Junior Ranger Angler Program. It's a great opportunity to get the youth out, learn how to fish. They have fishing poles. They have jackets for them to wear. There's two dates, and the first one is June 8th. Now, that's out at Sterling State Park. And the second date is July 13th, and that's at Hellenberg Park. So it's a great opportunity to bring the youth down, have some guidance, have some fun fishing, learn about it, and get the gear that goes with it. The times, there's 2 times in the day. As I read the flyer here, I believe it's for both at the dates mentioned, June 8th and July 13th, from 10:30 a.m. to noon, and the other time is from 1 to 2:30. So those are activities that is free fishing for the kids. So last comment I had is, and Councilman Lamore started on it, I think about, and I did talk to Mr. Pastu prior to the meeting, so I started to think about, I don't know if we have the date in which the new hires to the fire department start.
They've already started.
They have started.
Yes.
See, I thought the date was coming. So they've already started, so I'll make my comments this way. So I recognize that it's within the budget of this year for the hiring, but also I recognize that it's been vacant. Both these positions have been vacant for the past 2 years. So I think about the timing and also the opportunity that 2 additional personnel are going to add that's not currently present when we talk with our fire and our public safety officers. The other part is, I thought this through, it kind of conflicts what the majority council passed here not long ago, not to enforce the mileage residency on the firefighters due to the pending DTE tax valuation. So one time we're saying, well, we don't want to take action and force people to move because we don't know what the future is going to be. But then we're hiring 2 firefighters and we don't know what the future is going to be. And of course, the time frame for that. So we've been at the meetings, our work sessions, our budget sessions, and here the administration's indicated there will be adjustments within the public safety departments. And that's in a sense. And as was mentioned, we also are looking at what comes with the assessment. So I understand we passed the budget, the funding was there, but it's taken 2 years to get the positions. Now at the end, we're going to fund them when we don't know what the future holds. So I just bring that as a recognition that when we have the positions funded, the possibility is there that the funding will be less, or if it's here in the future, and we'll wait to see. Not about hiring department people that we have, but we're in a situation that's coming that we should be prepared for before doing it. That's just my comment. I did share with Mr. Pastu. I understand the position, the ability that is there to fund it, just as Mr. Is funded, and the ability that is there to hire. So that's my comments for this evening. Clerk Treasurer Lavoy.
I just have one quick item. I've been working with a few residents who've had some concerns about their tax payment that they mailed through the U.S. Post Office. Anyone who's been following my comments over the years knows that from time to time, about around election time, I talk about sometimes we have trouble with the mail. Apparently, we're also having some trouble now at tax time. So there are options, though. You can, of course, mail it, and you can call our office to make sure that it's gotten to our office. Your other option is we did implement a drop box, which is right here near the sidewalk at City Hall, and that's available 24/7. You can come and drop off your payment in there, and it's secure, and we check it at least twice a day, and during tax time, more than that. And then just last week of June, which is when the taxes are going to be due, we will once again have extended office hours for the convenience of the residents who are unable to get here during the normal 8 to 4:30 hours. We'll be here for a couple of hours afterwards to make it easy for you if you need to come down and talk with someone. So, but feel free to call our office, 734-384-9140. If you have any questions or if you need some assistance, we'll be glad to help you out. And that's all I have.
Thank you. Mr. Pastu.
I have nothing tonight, Your Honor. Thank you.
Thank you. This time, any comments from those present here this evening? Any comments? Yes, please come forward. Name and address, please.
Gary Reisig, 418 West 5th. As a participant in last Saturday's rain-shortened Relay for Life, I wanted to thank the members of the City Council and City Administration who came down to participate. And I think, as you've seen in articles in the newspaper, there are some serious issues about how and when this will continue. We want to do the luminaries sometime in the near future. I hope that the city will be interested and willing to participate, because I don't think, and I'm not a member of
Yeah.
the boards or anything, that at some point soon, we may be looking for a different site for the relay. The fairgrounds is just too big for the number of participants anymore. So, thank you.
State that after last year's, there was a brief conversation with the administration of wanting maybe to have some discussion, and we're always open to have discussions how we may accommodate many of the great work that's done in our community, nonprofits and others, and of course, Relay for Life is one of those that services us from regional. I just want to follow up on Councilman Ecolangeli's comment regarding the boards and commissions, because I know as we went through that, one thing I didn't, I recognized the night we were there, but also I appreciate Mr. Pastu sending out the email as we chatted. But I also want to give not only the boards and commissions and all the volunteers and duties they do, but the staff, the department heads, and I wanted to thank them all for attending the appreciation dinner. It's more than just a dinner. Every meeting, they are there, and I see there's four of them here and 5 of them here, I should say, and their participation at the appreciation dinner speaks well to their commitment. Actually, 6. I think most people here are our department members. I have left for the night here, but I do appreciate the efforts that all of our department managers and the department heads provide in support to the boards and commissions and getting them prepared to be making good decisions that really benefits the city as a whole, but also helps the council in some of our decisions as well. So I want to give thanks out to all the department heads. Much appreciated. With that, other comments from those present here this evening? Any final comments? None of the department heads? Okay. So,
Your Honor,
Councilman.
I'll make a motion that we go into closed session to discuss labor negotiations and pending litigation involving the following parties. Number 1, Stacy Hall. Number 2, a number of plaintiffs having filed similar lawsuits, specifically Mix Harms, Nichols, Blakesley, Cook, Helm, Clark and Johnson, Mills, Berry, Neerum, Johnson, Drummonds, Smallwood, Zaricki, Smith, and Smith Jr. Number 3, Leslie Pompey. Number 4, 44 Monroe LLC and 48 Monroe LLC. Number 5, 14 East First LLC. And number 6, Arnett Jackson.
Second.
Motion by Councilman Michelangelo, supported by Councilman Moore to go into closed session, but there's also a second item listed on the closed session.
I had mentioned that. I said labor negotiations.
Labor negotiation in the court. Okay, I'm sorry, I missed that. Okay, there's a motion and a second. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilperson Felder?
Yes.
Whitman? Yes. Equangeli?
Yes.
Vining?
Yes.
Jermaine? Yes. Lamore?
Yes.
Mayor Clark?
Yes. And thank you all for being here.